Hello, we are recording. And welcome to the Max Revenue Show. I am your host, Trey Shields, along with the Zen Master of Commercial Insurance, Micah Solis. Micah, how are you this morning?
Pretty good. Pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. I can see that you're just a ball of bubbling personality as always at 9 o'clock in the morning. The
Yeah,
uncaffeinated Micah Solis.
decaf for life.
Decaf. Jesus. Boring.
Stay aware.
Um, uh, all right, so just going to do kind of a Q&A episode. We've got some DMs and some other stuff, and I thought we'd just tackle that. That's good with you?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right, let's go. First question here. Let me pull this up. What are your thoughts on the Donald Trump assassination attempt, and was it an inside job?
Wow. Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. Yeah, I think it
And that's
was
from
terrible.
that's from TS in Louisiana, whoever that is.
Oh, I wonder who that could be. Yeah, no, man, I think it's terrible. I think violence is awful. I think when you got anyone getting shot, and I feel actually really bad for the family that got, the dad was killed, and I don't know who else. I think someone else was injured, so that sucks. And yeah, I mean, and I can't imagine, dude, to have your ear shot. I mean, that's nuts because you're literally what, a quarter of an inch from getting your brains blown out. So that's wild. There's so many different parts to it. I mean, it's just sad, but obviously it raises a ton of questions about how that could happen. Pretty odd that random citizens, are sitting there screaming, "Hey, there's somebody crawling onto the roof with a machine gun." And at that point, someone wasn't walkied like, "Hey, let's end this thing. Get the president, ex-president down." That's kind of odd to me. But nothing surprises me anymore. Uh, I hate to call myself a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of conspiracies, quote unquote, that have just been true, right? After years go by. And I mean, obviously, the assassination of JFK, I think we all know kind of was an inside job at this point. But if you could have said that probably in the 1970s, you would have still been looked at like, you're crazy. And now, finally 50, 60 years later, I think almost everyone would agree that there was something nefarious going on there. And CIA was probably involved. So, that's one of many. I'm not going to go down the other ones that I think are legitimate. But yeah, it's sad because basically they're undermining, the democratic process, and you know, it's just it's unfortunate. So hopefully he'll stay safe, and the rest of this year, the election years are always wild. Will go somewhat normal. But now that he survived, obviously, I think it's going to be a huge bolster to his, you know, odds of winning. So, yeah, that's what I feel about it.
The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Orwell,
George
1984.
Orwell, that guy was a genius. Yeah,
Yes, he was.
it's wild. He spoke a lot of truth, and yeah, it's
Yep.
just
All right, we'll move on.
insane.
I just wanted, yeah, we'll move on. Look into the, just look into it. That's all I have to say. All right. All right. Here's
How about
one,
how about those headlines though? Were they
dude.
were they written? I think they were written by insurance company uh, product designers, because
No,
you know
it
how
was
they call like,
that was producers sending in their apps. Dude, that's my meme. I'm gonna take that headline, and it'll be like producers, producers sugarcoating risk, or whatever it
yeah,
is.
no, I
That
would
that
say it's
that's
like,
great.
well, yeah, or like, like how we have like an exclusion. Well, in insurance we call it like an amendment or an endorsement, and so
Uh-huh.
CNN must have hired, insurance underwriters to write their headlines, because it said, Trump falls at rally and gets up. What? That's
Yeah,
just
this
silly.
is, I
That's
mean,
like producers. You'll have a slight increase at this renewal. Come on, here's your 35% increase, Mr. Business Owner.
but it's also
Like,
the
come
other
on.
way. It's also producers trying to sell it to underwriters, right? Where it's like, I mean, the
Yeah,
loss rate,
yeah, they
they've
got
had a couple
potential, man.
losses. Yeah,
Yeah, they're
well, how many
coachable.
losses? Well, I don't know. They have like 100% loss ratio. Um, no, I mean, just looking at those headlines, that's what infuriated me more than anything else. Was like just the blatant. I mean, if you can't look at the mainstream media right now and just see the blatant like steering of the narrative, it's just
Oh
like
yeah,
you are asleep at the wheel and you are just absolutely mainlining, you know, melatonin.
yeah,
You're asleep.
yeah,
All right,
yeah.
let's move on before we lose the 10 Democrats that listen to this. Um,
Just so you know, I'm not Republican.
oh, I'm not, I'm
No, that's for our
whatever.
audience. I'm more. I'm just
I,
kind of take whatever I feel, on each side. I'm not a hell bent straight ticket guy. Like I just never have been. I'm a libertarian, if anything. But I also see that that has its flaws. So I try to. I just think there needs to be more conversation. There's more gray, instead of
no,
black and
100%.
white everything. But
My
yeah, either
issue
way,
is
whatever side you fall in, it's terrible. The press is awful. I mean, if you can't see that by now, yeah, you're like you said, you're asleep. So wake
all right.
up.
Hi Trey, I'm the guy that called you a while back about your prospecting strategies. Love your focus at Max Revenue on cold calling and what guys trying to build their book up should be doing. Just curious, what are you using for mobile number data, and what dialer software are you using?
I used to use Zoom Info. I still think they're the best from what I've heard in terms of obtaining mobile data. So if you want to get cell phones, use Zoom Info. I don't know of a better. I've tried Seamless AI. They're they're fine for email. They're fine for everything else, but their mobile data sucked in my opinion. But Zoom Info's mobile data was kind of going downhill quickly too. Um, but interestingly enough, there's a guy I follow. He runs. Used to be. He bought Phone Ready Leads. He used to run a company called Apex Consulting, and then they bought Phone Ready Leads that kind of scores your phone data. I've talked about it on past episodes, but he claims and he runs these. Who runs these models where they blast out all these calls and figure out who picks up their phone. So he has the data to back the statement up. But he says that dialing in through a company phone tree is still performs literally. I think it was just as good, if not slightly better, than a cell phone. Now that might seem crazy, and I think there's probably a lot of other factors in there, but um, and I think that can be true, especially if you're calling low. When I say low mid market, I just say companies doing under 50 million revenue, or somewhere in that range, 10 to 50 million in revenue. So, so I wouldn't just I can't get cell phones. That's why no one picks up the phone. I don't think that's always accurate. I have noticed if I can get a cell phone, it's worked out really well for me, especially calling contractors. One way to get cell phones, if you can't get them through Zoom Info or you just can't afford it, I think it's $5,000 a month for an individual subscription now. Obviously, you can Google search the person's name. Sometimes you'll see a cell pop up, but just go to the office if you do drops, and if you can get their business card. A lot of times, the contractor, the business owner, will have a cell phone on there. Is what I found. Um, and actually, this is kind of crazy. Just ask the secretary, like, "Hey, he's never in. Does he have a cell phone that he answers?" And you'd be surprised. Sometimes they'll just be like, "Yeah, actually, that's the only way to catch him," and they'll give it to you. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Mm-hmm.
They might look at you crazy, but hey. And then the second part of that question was like phone calling systems. I mean, I did phone burner for a while. It was more than I think I found it was more than I needed. So it was like,
Yeah,
well, what's the point of doing it? Because we don't have to. Here's the deal. When a lot of those systems are great for SaaS sellers, I think, and people like SDRs that have to make 200 calls a
100,
day.
200 calls. Yeah,
Correct. If you're trying to make even 75 or less, you can do that manually just fine. And it gives you time to kind of slow down between each call. It's not, I'm not a huge fan of ton of research, but you can pull them up real quick, look at them, make your next call, log your notes, and you can get 75 calls a day done. Like if you have a designated 5 hours to call to 6, you should be able to do 75 calls and you're organized. You don't
You
even need
just
to do
repulse
75.
when
Yeah.
you just said 5 hours of cold calling a day. You literally just repulsed every single person who's listening to this podcast.
Hey, man, I know. But what else are you going to do? You have 8 hours of workday? I mean, if you're
Oh
a new
man, you need to
producer,
start a
especially.
you, bro. You need to do what all these other guys are saying. You need to start a YouTube. You need to start a podcast. Like you need to get out there and do all this personal branding. Don't you know that's how it works?
Yeah, that's worked out great for me. Um, I'm the poster boy for failed personal branding. No, yeah. So I mean, that's kind of that's how I would respond to that. I mean, I don't think you need a phone system. You don't need one, a parallel dialer. If you have a company that's willing to invest, great. Or maybe your agency has a model where you have like literally guys just making calls for you, then invest in it for those SDR type guys. But yeah, that's that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, we've talked with a couple of these firms that operate more of like an inside sales type thing where it's they're not necessarily pounding the pavement. They're more like dialing out, doing like what you said, really low mid market, and it's more volume of calls. I think that makes sense. But I tried phone burner too, and the problem that I found is it almost became a game to see how fast you could get it done.
Mm, yeah, you froze up there a little bit.
it, oh sorry,
Oh, you're back.
what I was saying was that the calls go by so fast. Like when you hang up with one, it goes to the next, and you don't have time. Like for me, anyways, it was like, okay, who am I talking to? What did we talk about last time? Like having a couple of seconds there in between calls to just have a general idea of what you talked about instead of it literally just auto populating to the next call, to the next call, to the next call. Sometimes I'm like, who am I asking for again?
Yeah,
When you're using the
yeah.
speed dialers.
You can slow. There's like two settings on the phone burner where there's a slower one where you can actually dictate, okay, before you click next call. What I would say, one thing that kind of screwed me with the phone burner is and I did it almost my first year at this new agent. When I switched agencies, is that what hurt me is I wasn't syncing up my notes. So I've noticed that now,
Mm,
like 2 years later, I'm like calling some old prospects. I was like, I swear I called this guy before. I was like, oh, those notes are in phone burner. And so that cost me, right? And I know there's probably a way to link it up with Salesforce where those notes would transfer, but I just wasn't that tech savvy. So if you're going to use those systems, make sure you link up the notes because I mean, it's all follow up. Like honestly, that's why you'd be fine just by hand because a lot of it just comes up with the follow up.
yep.
So yeah.
All right. Let me see here. 1 second. I had another one. Where is this at? God dog it. This is a guy I've gone back and forth. This is funny. It says he was basically just telling me about how he left agencies or whatever. He said, I've been preaching your ways since I switched from a small agency. No. He said, I've been preaching your ways since I switched from previous agency when we talked last to USI. Many non believers in the big shops, man. That's what he said, which is
Non-believers
funny.
of what though? Like
Just cold prospecting, cold calling.
that's interesting. I disagree.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of running out of questions. I feel like,
Well, that's not good for a Q&A
no.
Q&A podcast.
Really like
Uh,
this week's newsletter. I
hey,
was
I have a
curious
question for
though.
you.
Are you tracking the? Okay, I think we talked about this. Are you tracking the calls but no voicemails as a call or not? This morning I made 30 dials using my phone burner dialer, but 15 of those I didn't leave voicemails. Made 3 contacts, left 12 voicemails with gatekeepers.
So this guy was done making cold calls in 15 minutes and could go play golf, right?
I know. Yep. So I guess that goes to what we said earlier. So like, what do you? I think we talked about this friggin' last time. What do you consider a dial and what do you not? I consider, I mean, I don't know about you, but I consider business a dial. So if I call in and I'm asking for Ted and Ted's not available and I have Ted's cell phone and then I call Ted's cell phone and I can't get him there, I consider that one dial, even though I made
Sure.
2 calls. So it's just,
Yeah.
I
I
consider it
mean,
companies outreach too, but everybody can be different.
I think the key takeaway on this is, man, if you're not having the amount of conversations you need to have, you can make 10 calls or 100. If you're not talking to the right amount of people, you got to keep calling, right? It's a conversation game. You got to have enough conversations. And so if I call and they don't answer, if I call their cell phone and I call this person at the company's at 3 calls, it's like you're kind of losing sight of everything, in my opinion, because the baseline is 40 calls. To me, that's 40 calls into 40 businesses, asking for 40 decision makers. That it's a baseline again, but ultimately that's there as a guideline to get you to the metric, which is conversations, which is most important. That's how you're going to create deals and opportunities and fill your funnel. So don't lose sight of that. And when I get questions like this, I get a little bit. If I was like a coach to this person, I'd be like, dude, you're getting a little bit in the weeds. Like, are you just trying to check the box and be done? And be like, okay, now I don't have to worry about it. Like, that's not the right mindset either. Um, so, what do you feel about uh, golf for new
The
producers?
hell? Oh, I was like, that's a very important caveat
There's
on
a
the end
there's
of the
another there's
statement there.
another layer to this question.
What do I think about new producers being out on the course playing golf all the time?
Yep. Slash any hobby they like to do. If you were if you were to manage, younger producer, new guy just starting, not validated, how would you approach that basically?
Okay, I know it's going to be wildly unpopular, but I would micromanage the shit out of them for the first 3 years. Um, I know we've talked about this
Oh, you cut out there.
before, but I would, if you know how their program works, I don't know that I'd have 4 or 5 meetings a week, but I would definitely keep a finger on the pulse. And it's basically like, hey, we're going to get you through validation, and like, we're going to stay on top of this. And yeah, it's not going to be fun for the first 18 months, 3 years, whatever, while you validate. But the upside is you're going to have a way better chance of validating here than you will anywhere else. And then once you got to think of this 3 years as like like kind of like your undergrad or whatever. What do they call it in medical school? Your residency. Like this is you paying your dues. But once you get through this, and we've worked together, and I'm confident, and you're confident that you know how to do this, then you get all this autonomy and all this freedom. Um, but I wouldn't for the first at least until they validated. Uh, it would be a punching in, punching out type of deal. Very managed. I know that's
Sure.
probably not people. A lot of people are not going to like that. So when you say like, what are my thoughts on golf? I think that there are people who can do it, right? Like, we used to work with a couple of guys like this at the other agency. They had super big networks. They grew up at the whatever country club. They get in there and they're mixing and mingling and doing all that stuff. Um, I, but I think the percentage of people that it works for is so small, and at
Mm-hmm.
least from my observations, I probably just wouldn't even hire those guys to begin with. So I would be looking for the guy that had way more of a door to door history or a SaaS sales history or like a walk in type deal that had. I guess it's like anything else. I would be filtering out producers based off of who I thought I could help and who I thought fit best for my agency. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? And the
Mm-hmm.
guy whose dad, is the president at the local bank, and their mom is the head of the school board, and it's a who you know type thing. I probably wouldn't hire that guy. I think he'd be better fit to go to another agency. I'd more or less be looking for the guy who used to be the copier and or office products, and he's got an in. He's used to knocking on doors, and he's already called on a gazillion businesses. That's what I'd be
Mm-hmm.
looking for.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I would agree with you for the most part. Um, I don't think a lot of agencies do run that way. I think they bring on these younger agents and kind of just say, okay, we're going to work with you to validate, but you have a pretty flexible schedule. Obviously, if you're not showing up at the office, people are going to start to question things. But I don't think there's like a regimented, like, hey, if you want to golf 2 times a month, I don't think there's any way to crack that down, or maybe people can just look up for an excuse to play. But no, I'm with you. I think it, it's one of those things like you can earn it. Like once you get validated, play as much as you want, right? And you might get really efficient at selling insurance and have a good way to run your model, and you can do all the things, right? All thing, all family, do all that stuff, and that's awesome. That's the ultimate goal. I just think a lot of that has to be, yeah, sweat equity to get to that point, especially the first 2 years. But the one caveat I would say with you, and the reason I asked this question is when I was learning insurance, my trainer, and I think he kind of said this jokingly, but he was telling us this story that he lost this really big auto dealer. He quoted it would have been a couple 100,000 in premium. Remember, I was at a carrier, so that was a lot of money. It still is, I mean, good revenue to us, but he didn't get the deal, and he was like, "Dude, like we're like, oh, what'd you do?" And he's like, "I went to the movies. I got a huge bucket of popcorn, Diet Coke, and watched a movie." You know, and I actually did a LinkedIn post on this like probably 4 years ago, but I was like, sometimes you just got to go grab a popcorn, right? So it's like, I'm all for regimenting and staying on someone's behind to make sure they're getting validated, but also it's a grind, and so I feel like there's a balance between your mental health of doing that, even if it's just 2 3 years every single day. Yeah, you get your 2 weeks vacation or whatever, 3 weeks, you get, so that's 15 days, but that's not a ton when you're getting rejected all the time. So it's like, if you can work it into your schedule, like where you can go in the morning and play golf or do something to get, if you're having a terrible week, like I wouldn't feel too much guilt about sometimes just being like, you know what, I got to go do something. But now if that turns into a weekly habit or a daily habit, or that's where the problem begins. But if once a month you're having a bad day, I wouldn't beat yourself up over going to play golf, you know dipping out of the office early at noon or 1. And that's the cool part about being a producer, though. If you know you're going to go play golf that day, well, structure your day so that morning you can pound out 40 calls, right? And so that's, again, that's how you can do both ultimately. But yeah, I just wanted to ask that question because I thought it was good advice, by that trainer, basically just to not take everything too seriously, and sometimes you just got to know when, like, all right, dude, I gotta go do something for me,
That's a great point. Um,
But I don't know how you
Now,
manage that. Like, oh, producers, you're going to be in here 8 to 5 Monday through Friday for your first 3 years, and then that's it. You got to be here at the office just like an account manager would be, just like anyone, unless you got a meeting. That's the only time you get out of the. I mean, I think that becomes a little bit over the top. I don't know. I think because you're also hiring people that you just know have that fire, and they shouldn't be hopefully abusing that. But there is going to be people that abuse that leash, right? That length of that leash that you're giving them. So I think it comes back, yeah, to hopefully hiring the right person that have that fire, and just know that, okay, if I'm playing golf today, this isn't a habit. This is just something I do, but I can manage my time well to hit my numbers.
yeah, that's a great point. I guess what I'm saying, I guess what I think the right thing to do is you have to, like, on a day-to-day basis, you have to know what the producers are doing. I guess is what I'm saying. Like, so maybe I would break it down like morning or afternoon, where it's like, okay, schedule your call block, and like, so we know when your call block is scheduled. and maybe I sit in there with you on your call block, or maybe I listen in, or maybe I'm just know. And then like if you got your calls done, and I know that you got your calls done, and it's 11:30, and you want to go play golf. I guess it's just like it's not that I would be on you 8 to 5, but it's like I would know when you're doing your prospecting or when you're having your meetings, and like anything you do outside of that. I mean, run wild. I don't really
So would
care.
you manage it more like, hey, hit these metrics every month or every week, and then hopefully on a monthly basis. And if you do, shoot, you have all the flexibility in the world. If you don't, I'm going to be asking questions, or I hope I don't see you on the golf course. You're not going to be fired if you go to play golf one day, but that's, if you're not staying on course, and we're doing that out of love, right? Like it's kind of like a parent. Like we're doing that out of trying to help you, not trying to hurt you. I think I would probably lean
Yeah,
more
and
that side than like the got to be in the office hours. I'm going to watch when you swipe in, swipe out. Like I think that's a little bit over the top.
yeah, and I've actually given this a lot of serious thought because we've kind of been approached by a couple of agencies and had this idea floated to us, right? Like either fractional sales management or like actually coming to work for come one agency actually reached out to see like would I like to come manage their new producer team. So I've actually given this a whole lot of thought, and it would actually make more work on me, right? Because the more that I manage you, that means the more that I have to be in the office, right? And so I wouldn't want to give myself more work just because it's because it would actually benefit more. Like I actually think it would work. I think if you were a sales manager, you've got to be in the boiler room with them while they're making calls. And so like if you've got to be in, I would want you in the office making calls, and I'm going to be there with you. Um, and even if you have 10, 20 people, you're still just like, that's what I used to do when I ran the sales team for the that minor league baseball team. We had like a bullpen. And so you're always just kind of like floating around, seeing who's saying what's going on. And not that you're there to correct them, but I mean, let's be honest, you and I both know this, especially when we used to have those calling contests. People would sandbag the shit out of their numbers, right? Like just
Oh, it's
make numbers
silly.
up. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I and it's not a matter of like, oh well, I'm an adult, I can whatever. Well, yeah, you're also an adult and you lie about how many calls you're making. So, let's be honest here. You know what I mean? And after a
Mm-hmm.
while, people are going to prove, meritocracy. They're going to prove that they actually are doing what they say they're doing. But I'm going to keep an eye on those people because the other thing is I want to weed those people out before we've invested 3 years in them. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But that you have to be there in the trenches with them to do that. And I don't think you can manage a team. I do not think you can manage a sales team remotely. I just don't think you can do it. You got to be in there.
That segues nice into. I was going to mention at a post that did pretty well last week. Or what I say? Yeah, osmosis is oxygen for your sales career. Thought that was a pretty catchy little title. Um, but it's literally like I talk to other people. I look at myself. Even if you don't have a mentor, just going into an office is really critical, I think, if you've never done it before. I think if you've done it before, like when I came to this agency, I was on an island by myself in a new state. I had no one physically present, right? But I had 7 years at an agency where I was in the office every day, pretty much, even up to year 7, right? Um, I was never working remote. So having that, I mean, you just pick it up again through osmosis, right? Just being around someone, they just kind of like, it's hard to explain. You just pick up all the little nuances you can't pick up on a phone call, or just even if you have a set weekly training call. It's like, that's, um, you're just going to miss out on stuff. And I learned a ton from other people, like beyond just producers. It was our marketing team, like, oh, how do you review that? Oh, what's this exclusion mean? Or what is this version of that additional insured form? Like, oh, I didn't know that, like, or, and all these little things you're picking up, and then you take that back, and just even just the ways they say things, right? Like, and how they sell, and how they sell the underwriters, how they call them, how they approach them. Like there's just, man, there's so much to learn and pick up. And I think you're selling yourself short if you think you can be remote as a sales, as an agent in your first year or two, if you've never done it before. And even if you're in like I was, year 6 or 7 at MMA, I was still going to the office and I was still learning every day from people. I wasn't trying to learn necessarily, taking courses to learn, but I was just learning by being around people at meetings, at carrier meetings, all that stuff. And so I think that gets overlooked a lot of times. And I think there's power in proximity for sure. And we miss out on that.
100%. 100%. I completely agree. So I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. Like you probably are the only reason I'm in this career still. And then also, you have become a way better golfer because of your proximity to me. So it's this give and take.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I can be that for you in your golf game.
Did you have done about as much for my golf game as Joe Biden has? Which is nothing. I owe all my golf skill, my consistency, to the greatest Zen master of them all, Jim Venetos. Stillness, my friend. Stillness.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to end the episode before we lose everybody. Oh, yeah, I guess real quick. I mean, I guess I should just update everybody who's been following along on our, golf adventures. I did shoot a 79 on my last round. And Micah, what did you? So I am trending in an amazing direction. And then yesterday I went out again on an absolute goat track. It's actually normally a pretty nice course, but it had been raining. They couldn't cut it real well, and they literally gave us half off because they're like, we've lost half of our staff, and so
Wow.
like fairways were like what the fringe is usually, and the rough was, I mean, friggin' insane, Carnoustie, a foot high. So anyway, shot an 81 despite all that. So I mean, I am trending in an I am pumped about my game. Where are you at? How'd you shoot last week?
I shot an 88, but I'm so 88, 85 since I've gone all in on Jim Venetos' method. On the surface, you would say, oh, that's, you're going in the wrong direction, but it's a 3-stroke difference. What I'm proud of is that I absolutely came out with a goose egg the first 9. I shot a 47, and then I regained my composure. Even on the 10th hole, I opened up with a double bogey. I'm like, come on, dude. I was pissed. And then all of a sudden, I was like, just get it to, like, you're doing the right stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then end a 41 on the back. So and that was better. When I shot the 85, I hadn't shot a 41. I think it was a 40. I think I shot 42, 43. So from just a 9 hole, I got a 41. I mean, I've shot in a 38 as my best ever 9, but I followed that up with a 50 that day. So I'm going in the right direction. We'll get there. I'll break 80. I just need to play more.
Yep,
just like
I told you that.
Calling,
you just need to play
gotta
more.
Get more reps.
So this last round, this 81, I shot a 42 on the front, and then I was 1 under through 6 on the back 9. I went birdie on 10, missed a birdie on 11. Like, I'm talking about inside 6 feet. Like, I should have definitely been 2 under. And then bogeyed, what would that be? 15, 16, 17, 18 for a 39.
Get it together, man.
So 39 Dang. On the back. Yeah. So anyways, all right. Well, I'm sure people are bored to death. Probably 75% of these people that listen don't give a you-know-what about golf, and they're like, oh, God, here they go again. So let's wrap this up. If you feel like you're out on an island and you don't really know what to do, and just like, dude, somebody just give me an easy, simple system that I can follow to be successful. That's why we made the Producer Playbook. At the time of this recording, it's a whopping $195. That price is going to be doubling or tripling soon, so go grab it. Yeah, and you can check that out. I'll put all the links in the show notes. But we appreciate you listening, and Micah, keep doing your thing, and I'll catch you soon.
Take care, man.
All right, bye, guys.
See ya.